this video, you're going to see the future.
U.S. Treasury Street higher.
Breaking news. We've got a livestock there.
Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand. As you have requested, we're going to be talking about bird flu. We're already terrified, even though apparently there are vaccines available. Vaccines are being developed, even though the one apparent death happened to someone who was feeling very, very poorly, and I think was a professional stuntman and lived for risk. Did he die from bird flu or with bird flu? Have we been through this before? What kind of PCR tests are being used to diagnose bird flu, and what is the aim of bird flu? I suppose now, having been through this once, what we can say from the outset is, are the measures being proposed likely to generate profits for powerful corporations and grant the state the ability to regulate? Will they cause political division? And perhaps more importantly than anything at all, will they generate fear and terror, taking you out of your natural state of connection and ease into a frantic and febrile state where you're easily manipulated so that you will yield to bureaucratic control, where you are told that your state and your government cares for you and is there to protect you, and particularly to protect the vulnerable, while marching you into endless war. Maybe that's why we are seeing the rise of populism across Europe. We'll be talking about that. And maybe that's why we're seeing extraordinary gaffes when it comes to discourse around militarism and war. All of this we'll be discussing. But if you're watching us on YouTube, you're going to have to click the link in the description after 15 minutes or so. After, like any good drug dealer, we'll give you a little hit for free, and then we shall withdraw into that sweet stream of freedom that we call Rumble, for that is its name. If you're an awakened wonder like Zypher 2000 and Shaman 711, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the additional content that we're providing and the question and answer chat sessions that we're continuing to do. Over there in the Rumble chat, Razbender, Kyle Rhino, so many familiar and glorious names using free speech in the way that it's meant to be used, in the way that Boeing are meant to be deployed. It seems like it's another day, another Boeing plane's on fire. Let's catch up with a few of these crazy stories before moving into what appears to be a tsunami of populism moving across Europe. And we'll be talking over the course of the next hour about why that might be happening. And why, of course, you remember, I don't know if you saw last week, I had a meeting with Don Jr. I had a conversation with some people from the Republican Party. And I said, and tell me if you agree with this, that if you really care about democracy, you have an obligation really to just ensure that you don't have another term of Joe Biden. Let me know what you think is a greater threat to democracy. Is it Joe Biden or is it Donald Trump? Because certainly there seems to be a lot of, a lot of people are willing to say you can vote for anyone as long as it's Joe Biden. The chat's not moving here, guys. If someone can have a look at that so that the chat moves. Cheers, guys.
Holy crap.
I'm still in residence in Rumble. When it comes to returning to the United Kingdom, I think I'll swim home or walk home or find some other method to travel home rather than the terrifying proposition of being in the unreliable arms of Boeing. Across Europe, France, Belgium, Germany, there have been European elections. The member countries of the EU all send politicians to Europe to participate in the technocratic ramblings that constitute government there. Of course, the British left Europe a little while ago, but the reason people are talking about a sort of a tsunami of populism or a right-wing rise is because of these European elections. France has called its own general election in response to the terrible results that their leading party, Macron's leading party, Macron, another plain globalist, has called a general election in France, and I think similar things are happening in Belgium and elsewhere. Let's have a little look at it. Following a historic loss to Marine Le Pen's right-wing party in European elections on Sunday, French President Emmanuel Macron said he is dissolving the French Parliament. Now, if you've been paying attention to French politics, you'll know that there's been a populist movement there, the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vests, for a while, where people were talking about corporatism, protesting on the steps of BlackRock, outraged about the direction of French politics, essentially saying, we want to put France first. And I wouldn't mind betting that in Belgium, people are saying, we want to put Belgium first. And it seems like in the UK, people are saying, we want to put the UK first. And I know that in the United States of America, because I'm here in your country right now, people are saying, put America first. Now, one way of framing that is saying, oh, people are incredibly nationalistic and racist. Another way of looking at that is people are patriotic, want to deal with their own lives, and don't want to be supporting endless wars across the world that seem to generate profit for one strata of society, and it seems cause devastation and incredible loss of life everywhere else. Macron said France will hold new elections on June the 30th and July the 7th, a high-stakes manoeuvre that the WSJ said stunned the nation after projections based on early ballot counts came in for Sunday's elections for the European Parliament. The projection showed National Rally garnering 31% of the vote, twice the support for Macron's Renew party. Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo has announced his resignation after a similar wave of populist nationalist parties swept up votes in bloc-wide elections. Apparently, everyone in the world has just simultaneously gone racist. Either that or neoliberalism is failing. It's failing because we are endlessly invited to support war. It's failing because people are experiencing an incredible rise in the cost of living. It's failing because people seem to be deeply concerned about immigration and by and large want control of their own borders. In a democracy or in any kind of electoral process that claims to be representative, the will of the people is meant to be paramount and defining and supreme. What we have now, it seems, is establishment elite edicts that are passed down, and anyone that defies them or argues with them is sort of dismissed as racist. It was curious. I thought the response to me saying that if you care about democracy and you only had the choice of Trump or Biden, it would be more responsible to vote for Trump than Biden. Of course, you know that I'm friends with Bobby Kennedy. That's what I believe, that Bobby Kennedy should be included in the debates, that America should have as much variety, opportunity, and conversation as possible. Some people have pointed out that that doesn't even represent a wide enough range of options. David Icke on X, I noticed, said that all of those people have a similar view when it comes to Middle Eastern policy and Middle Eastern war. I think that probably most people in this country at the moment don't want to be involved in war in other countries. That seems to be what, that seems to be what the temperature is based on what I can pick up. And who can blame people, really, given that these wars are punitive, unnecessary, and tragic? We'll be looking at that in a minute. Let's have a look at some mainstream media reporting on these European elections, and so that you can see that what's happening here in your country, the United States of America, what's happening wherever you're watching this, Australia, Canada, the UK, Ireland, there seems to be something happening. And, Jesus, it's good in a regard that it is global, because we are continually facing new global threats, not least currently bird flu.
Hand in hand with what we are seeing with the conservative movement spreading across the globe. Left-leaning parties in France, Germany, and Italy, folks, they suffered major losses in legislative elections. Results, in fact, get this, forced President Emmanuel Macron to immediately dissolve parliament. He's calling for new elections. Again, far-right parties have had big gains at the European Parliament. You're looking live here at Brussels as they are talking about the results coming in. Again, it's Germany, it's France. Big movements here across the world as conservative movements grow. And of course, Donald Trump right here at the forefront of what is happening in America to bring back the values and the policies Americans love and want to restore our great nation.
I don't know, man. It seems like we are seeing significant shifts across the world as centralized power resists the will of ordinary people continually through bureaucracy. Before we get into what's happening in Ukraine and Russia and seemingly the escalating threat and likelihood of all-out war, let's just touch on Bobby Kennedy's claim that he ought to be allowed to participate in the debates. Let me know what you think about that. This post on X has had quite a lot of traction. What do you want? Do you want Bobby Kennedy to be included in those debates, or would you like less electoral choice? Would you like more people to participate in conversation or less people to participate in conversation? Let me know in the chat. A lot of people are talking about Biden's visit to Normandy to commemorate, if not celebrate, D-Day. I suppose this was the last time that any of us had clarity about what good and evil meant. If you think of some significant events in the meantime, 9/11. 9/11, a terrible tragedy for your nation, was used to legitimize war in the Middle East, the ramifications of which are being felt to this day. The pandemic period, where at the outset we felt humanity is under threat. We must unify and obey in order to protect the sanctity of life, for surely there is something sacred that connects us all. All of those narratives, all of those stories fell apart. All of the stories that I just listed present us with more questions than answers. D-Day was one of those moments where we knew what heroism was, where we understood what good versus evil looked like, where we understood the nature of sacrifice. War has certainly become more nuanced and complex. And I think a lot of people that have doubts about Joe Biden's ability to govern this great nation and to carry the mantle of the world's most powerful man have those doubts precisely because of his inability to understand tone. In a minute, you'll see Joe Biden talking about the deaths of, I think, 300,000 Russian people, deaths and injuries of 300,000 Russian people, as if he's talking about a video game score or likes on a popular post on TikTok, though he ain't likely to reach those kind of levels. We've been looking at the metrics and it's not looking good for Joe Biden over there. People have been talking about some of his mishaps, shall we call them, some bodily function misdemeanors seem quite possible and plausible. But what I'd like to draw your attention to is his inability to understand that on a day that's commemorating the tragic loss of heroic individuals that were willing to lay down their lives for freedom, talking about the deaths of Russians as if it's a sports score seems pretty inappropriate to me, particularly as he doesn't talk about the number of Ukrainian people that are dying in order to perpetuate a war that increasingly seems absolutely unwinnable. When we commemorate and celebrate the lives of those that have lain them down in order that we may enjoy freedom, don't we tacitly have to acknowledge that now more than ever, the institutions that we once prized are becoming foreclosed, they're becoming captured, are becoming less and less about freedom? When we look at the rise of the right wing across Europe, isn't it curious to note that when we had a populist moment on the left in your country, Bernie Sanders, or a populist moment on the left in my country, Jeremy Corbyn, the establishment closed it down. They ate their own. Rather than acknowledge that there are arguments against financial corruption to be had from both the left and right, they foreclosed against it and they shut it down. And now they wonder why they are seeing such a swing towards the right across Europe. And it seems like in your country, the United States of America too. Let's have a look at some of Joe Biden's clumsier moments across D-Day, and then note a significant moment where he is tone deaf when it comes to the issue of war, particularly now that Russia have said that they have declared the United States an enemy for the first time actually in history. So perhaps we're in a historic moment now. You might not have time to die from bird flu. Nuclear war might get you first. Let's have a look at Joe Biden arriving in Normandy. From a body language perspective, that was clumsy. We needed a little bit more motion there. It seems ridiculous, doesn't it, every time you see propaganda saying, he's sharper than ever, he's fast as a whip, he's lightning fast, you should see him in the sack, this guy's pelvis is like a pneumatic drill. People are going to a ridiculous length to say that Joe Biden is some sort of priapic force, some incredible overlord that should be governing the world naked. But it seems to me that when you see him in public, he looks like he's in considerable trouble. In a way, what we've got there is two people in charge of countries that they're dangerously out of step with. Macron, who has misinterpreted and misunderstood the tone and temperature of France radically, and Joe Biden, who increasingly people see as the biggest threat to world peace and to democracy and to American institutions. How can it be claimed that at a moment that Russia are declaring the United States of America an enemy for the first time in history, that voting for Donald Trump is crazy and irresponsible, or excluding Bobby Kennedy from debates is the right thing to do? This individual, frail though he may be, and sympathetic as I am towards his human frailties and to all of our frailties as human beings, seems to be guiding us towards an irreversible problem.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin.
Let's have a look at some of these moments that are photo. Okay, so there's a moment here where he turns around too early. I've not seen this yet. Let me have a look. I'm sick of honoring these guys. I'm going to honor something over there. Like, confused Macron there. If you're French, that's more worrying than if you're American, because Macron's like, oh, maybe we should be honouring something in this direction. And that dear old Jill, she's spent her whole life spinning around for that fella. I'd say amp him up a little more for this ceremony.
So that was from earlier, and this is live now.
Oh dear, that's unfortunate, but we're not here just to ridicule and laugh at Joe Biden, one of our fellow human beings, on a graceful trip through the limitless, here with us on earth temporarily in human form before returning, I pray, to the ultimate divinity that connects us all. No, although, well, let's have a look at that bit where he did appear to defecate, and then we'll look at his lack of nuance and diplomacy when discussing the tragic death of hundreds of thousands of Russians, neglecting to mention the deaths of Ukrainians, and not properly owning the policy decisions that are making it more and more likely that people from your country and my country will also have to lay down their life for a war that at this point is still preventable. First, though, this.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin.
Oh, I see. That's when Lloyd J. Austin's creating a lot of tension, isn't it? Please welcome Lloyd J. Austin. Is that Joe Biden's code word for his poop? Okay, Joe, come to the bathroom. Lloyd J. Austin's about to visit. Oh, God. No, that was so inconvenient. But then look, aside from this ludicrousness is I would say, the catastrophic mishandling and clumsiness when it comes to the fact that we are in a war now, albeit still to some degree a proxy war with Russia, that Russia have declared the United States an enemy, and hundreds of thousands of people are dying right now, you might argue, unnecessarily.
They've inflicted on the Russian aggressors, they've suffered tremendous losses, Russia. The numbers are staggering. 350,000 Russian troops dead or wounded.
It's not a Black Friday sale. It's the tragic statistic of lives lost. Ukrainian lives lost, Russian lives lost, money made, men and women in Congress owning stocks and shares in companies like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and Boeing. I'd hope they make better weapons than they do fuselages, because those things can't seem to get more than 100 yards without going up in flames. I'm swimming home from Florida. I'm telling you that now. It's the kind of tone-deaf, calamitous jingoism that makes you realize that there's a requirement for nuance, that there's a requirement for a different type of diplomacy, that claiming that voting for Donald Trump is a catastrophic, hysterical and ridiculous act shows you how out of step the legacy media and the governing class are about what's happening in your country and increasingly across the world. Let me have a quick look at this. Biden celebrated the deaths of Russian soldiers in Ukraine during a speech in Normandy, commemorating the 80th anniversary of D-Day. It's a time where we're meant to be honoring those that have given their lives. It's a time when we're meant to question our own priorities, the way we live, what we live for, what a nation means, what the duty of an individual is to a nation or a tribe, what our duties are collectively and individually to God. not to sort of jingoistically celebrate dead Russian folk. Russian officials were not invited to the D-Day commemoration, despite the Soviet Union, of course, being a significant, necessary ally of the US and France during World War II and suffering tens of millions of deaths. Perhaps they experienced more deaths and tragedy than any of us. It's astonishing, isn't it? Because the very fact that there would have been, I'm assuming, German diplomats and political leaders, even though, of course, they were our declared enemies at that time, and Russia were excluded, shows you that we're sort of participating from a macro level. We're participating in a ridiculous game. There were so many amazing lessons available in the pandemic period, and we didn't learn any of them. We're on one planet, whilst we need regional, localized government and control. Whilst we should never yield to centralized authority, we have to recognize that we have a collective duty here to one another as human beings before God. It's pretty terrifying, isn't it, to recognize that we are so out of step with basic values and principles that we are willing to allow a spectacle like took place in D-Day to pass, only really pausing to note that it appeared that the world's most powerful man defecated, stared in the wrong direction, celebrated the deaths of opponents in a war that you were allies during the conflict that he's meant to be commemorating as if he was posting about a video game score. It's a pretty tragic time. Let's have a look at a message now from one of our partners. It's 1775 Coffee, made by Rumble for Rumble. Drink coffee that respects your freedom. When that caffeine hits you, you will know that it's not from people that hate you. Let's have a look at this message.
Hey, this is exciting. We've got a great partner today. It's Rumble. But beyond Rumble, it's Rumble's latest venture. Let me ask you first, are you a Sleepy Joe type character with zero cognitive performance, struggling to muster focus and brain power for basic things like running the United States of America? You've got to stop drinking woke liberal coffee that hates you and your way of life and start your day by drinking Rumble's very own 1775 coffee. This is going to be the best tasting coffee you've ever had. Seriously good, ethically sourced from a family farm in the high altitude mountains of Bolivia. Not in the Bolivian lowlands run not by a family but by a single man still living with a pet. No! Instead of waking up and drinking your big corporation owned woke ideology coffee that's probably making you sick from the pesticides it's sprayed with, try Rumble's 1775 revolutionary coffee. Support freedom of speech. Build a parallel economy that actually values you and loves you. My favorite? It's dark, of course. I've always found the lure of the dark irresistible. I'm sorry, how can I stay mad at you? You're just going to have to wait over there for a little while. Level up your morning routine with a 1775 coffee. Sleep all night knowing your hard-earned dollary dues are going towards supporting freedom-loving creators like me on Rumble. Visit 1775coffee.com now, pick up your first bag, use the code BRAND to save 10% on your first order. Oh, come on. Why choose, you know? Okay, back to the content.
1775, a delicious beverage, whole bean, medium rare. You can crunch them straight out of the packet, I would say. You don't even need hot water. Hey, listen, if you're watching us on YouTube, we're going to wrap up this story about Joe Biden shitting us into Armageddon quite casually. And we're going to finish that. And then we're going to talk about bird flu and how to avoid it, or whether or not to start frantically panicking about it. So click the link in the description. And if you're not an Awaken Wonder yet, like Janice 6 or Rational Anarchy or Oinker Space, become one. And join us for question and answer, stay behind little specials. See you in a second. There's a link there in the description. Get on over to this live stream.